Hello. We'll be starting shortly. And tonight is step 12. Chris. I'm doing well. I hope everyone had a nice holiday. We're back. Tonight we'll complete this round of the workshop as people are gathering in. We'll also be continuing alumni workshops after the new year, another 8-week step workshop review. And we might surprise you by adding some more from topics such as grief to divorce, employment rights, changing careers as a result of a spiritual awakening. So we can, I'll review that at the end again, and love to hear all of your input on this through reaching out to myself, Brooke, or Megan, or any alumni coordinator. And we'll take all of these ideas into consideration when designing our next workshop and future workshops. Hi, Lisa. Well, what we could do first is have a little short discussion. That's a review of the first 11 steps of what we went over the last 7 weeks. We talked about how to work the first 11 steps. We've had guests on here that spoke to how they work them. And you see this universal theme that we're trying to go off of, either the consideration of some original programs. AA could be one of them. Then NA, ideas that you see in non-traditional 12-step programs, say like a Dharma or refuge recovery, that practice Buddhist approaches through taking inventories and having an awareness now, a spiritual awakening. What we're looking at is the first step is that we started this by admitting we have a disorder, a substance use disorder, alcohol use disorder. And you see that in the other programs. You see that in 1938, a doctor kind of put his career on the line to help the 100 men and women who were publishing the book Alcoholics Anonymous by giving his opinion, not a theory at the time, but an opinion that alcoholism could be a disease. He was describing it, an allergy manifested in the way alcoholics consume alcohol abnormally. For addicts, you could see this description in NA. And that's evolved after about 80 years of research, that we know it's a disorder, a cognitive, neurological, emotional, social, somewhat economic disorder that could come from 3 prior conditions: attunement, detachment, trauma. And once the soothing's been met with our drug of choice, a storm's created where the brain starts to give you these subtle messages that this drug or alcohol is key to survival, emotional survival. So for all the benefits it may have given us in our early active addiction, by late stage, will is gone, choice is gone. Consequences are becoming far steeper than any output the drug or drinking could give us. And we're in a really bad, desperate, dark spot that's filled with dread, anxiety, depression, and we might not be able to quit on our own. We're coming to terms with this in steps 1 and 2. And it says, came to believe what? That a power greater than ourselves that could come in the form of your faith, whatever it was, new or old. This could come in the form that it's not going to be your plan. You're going to need to be a part of a community or have an honest discussion with a clinician or a peer that exists in one of these communities to think, well, maybe I can get sober the same way. This isn't my plan of just waiting for your will to wake up one morning and everything will be all right. That could be a really fatal mistake. By step 3, we're making a commitment to the community in the form of, we saw that they suggested a prayer. If that makes you uncomfortable, they suggest you use your own words. Maybe take this step. Step 3, you're acknowledging that you've had a problem. You want to try a new way to get out of this. You're realizing the problem isn't the actual drinking or shooting heroin. The problem is a prior condition. The use is the end result of something I'm not dealing with. And we could say this by confronting 4 character defects. And we start with the first, selfishness. This idea of what selfishness is in my will. I haven't really been exercising it anyways. If I'm going to have a spiritual awakening, it's telling me I'm asleep. There's parts of my life I have just not seen the truth of. They're too painful. And we're going to break addiction down now by steps 3 and 4 into 4 terms and stop talking about drinking and shooting heroin. We're going to start talking about selfishness, resentment, dishonesty, and fear. And we're going to use this language because, first of all, it has an immediate effect. If I'm not talking about going to Kensington or I can't drive by this bar, I'll drink. And this could be true in early sobriety. I'm not knocking that. But that's not the problem. We're going to put it back about another 100 yards and say, if I could look out, if I could start looking for resentment and my fears and dishonesty and the selfishness, if I start recognizing these things immediately, I'm putting 100 yards between me and relapse. This is what they believe. So let's really examine this unresolved life. And that's what a resentment is. It's you're refeeling. It's this emotional life that keeps repeating itself in the form of grudges, humiliation, even when we're by ourselves. This is where all our cognitive space is going to. Unresolved emotions. This could be a result of trauma, detachment, PTSD, and what initially felt like the solution, being blasted, is now added to the problem. So we write this script. We saw some forms that how we could write a 4th step, NA. We saw AA, the classic, the simple way, a really thorough way to answer all the questions. Whatever your approach between you and your sponsor, I don't knock any of them. Just get started. Step 3 is not complete until you buy a notepad and a pen and start writing. From there, we have this script. We can have a discussion with our sponsor, or a therapist, or a priest, or a friend, someone that won't be harmed by this story. We're going to tell our whole life story, the real story of pain that's going on and pain we may have caused, and see what we could do about this, and face off with it to finally let the ego die. The ego, when I'm sober and I'm just not drinking, that's my first defense, is my fantasy life about myself and how I view the world. Step 4 lets us confront this because it's failed. My ego does not work in a room full of people when I have anxiety. It's not going to save me anymore. Addiction has taken this luxury away from me. I have to find where my authentic self is, and I got to put this dumpster fire out first. And that's what step 4 and 5 are about, clearing that wreckage so I could feel a clean slate, an ideal. And we saw step 6 lets us see and imagine an ideal. It lets us review the first 5 steps. It introduces us to meditation, where we take an hour, make sure, did we do this right? Did Did I tell my whole fifth step? Maybe I didn't trust my sponsor. And if that's a scenario, we said, tell someone else. You could tell multiple people. Just keep moving forward. Don't get morbid. Just keep going. Step 7 lets us conclude that hour with saying, this is me. This is the truth about me. It comes in AA. You saw a form of a prayer. NA, we're making this acknowledgement that we can now be curious about the things, the frailties of ourselves without this morbid judgment, so we can change it. We came up with an imagination of what our integrity would look like, or the goal we'd like to meet. Though we may, have new resentments in the future, or have new fears, we know the ones in our past. I think the point's missed sometimes when you hear people discuss it. The ones in the past we could put out so they don't kill us. Because, the description in recovery programs is that this is what's fatal. We know if you use fentanyl long enough, the probability of you overdosing is high. And we know fentanyl physically killed you. But we want to take that language and push it back to our brains and our what some people would call your spiritual life, your fourth dimensional life. I need to have an existential awakening. So this is where I could solve the problem, and it's always been the problem for me. So step 7 is letting us acknowledge that, and put that fire out, move past these ones. Around this time too, I jumped ahead. I introduced step 10. That looks like page 86 in Alcoholics Anonymous, where we can review our days so we're not starting new fires. It's pretty hard to relapse if you're reading 86 every night before you go to bed. Take a review of the day, have an intention. Then in the morning, we could have this meditation practice. That could be a set of prayers. I was an atheist. I was praying the prayer of St. Francis every morning. It didn't ruffle my feathers. It's everything I want it to be. I want it to be understanding more than I needed you to understand me. I wanted these new ideals. That's where I started until it evolved into a meditation. Zzz. It's Kevin. Hi, Kev. So I'm starting to look at these things. I'm getting a little momentum. I'm getting courage. I've made friends in maybe a recovery community. I'm looking at step 8. Step 8 is kind of a cheat. We noticed it's fully done to the 90% of it. If we wrote a 4th step, our amends are going to be our harms and our grudge list, resentments. So that's halfway done. What step 8 allows for is maybe a plan to start being put in place. Did I miss anyone that maybe I didn't feel resentful against, and they're not on this list? Or something comes back to you in a misty memory while you're driving on the turnpike. Oh my God, that's a cringe. I said that to someone. We could jot it down and we know, okay, there's one more. We weren't being dishonest. You might not remember. But it also allows for you to make an easy resentment first, because resentments, we're starting to see the ideal is not about us feeling good, though that may happen, very well may happen, but that is not the goal. The goal is to make things right, to change things. So we could come up with a plan. We might not want to approach our ex-wife or our dad or an employer that just followed us. Maybe we want to just a friend that we owe $100 to, someone that you've had an argument with, but they're not in your life, but you could approach them. You start to do this so you could get used to 3 kind of things you would want to go. Do I have everyone's consent that was involved in this resentment? So I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. Did I tell another person that would understand what my intention is to do with this? So I don't have some selfish motive to feel good or get this out of the way. And we start to get a rhythm in making these steps. And we saw that's where the promises are introduced. If we're halfway through this amends list, we're going to get more steam to change our lives. We're now becoming awake that our future could be unknown. That's exciting. We know what the future is in addiction. It's dread, and death is just shadowing us, or tragedy, or just total depression. We don't know what sobriety is, and we're getting excited about this uncertainty that the future may be filled with a lot of hope. of doing something interesting, meaningful with my time and my life now that I've met some new friends. Step 10 we see is this way of thinking of these first 9 steps churning in our heads. It's a step we can't complete. Step 11, we see AA suggests 2 things to do it twice a day. We talked about other ways of practicing meditation and how profound it could be for a person. It's just not stress relief. It's this idea that we can be present and we don't have to retreat to a fantasy life. Life in itself is where we're needed the most. This is where we're going to be of the most help. Having a larger capacity for empathy, having a larger volume of handling stress, especially for other people and their burdens, considering other people. And now we're at step 12, and it says, having had a spiritual awakening. So, as a result of these steps, of these disciplines and these ideas that become kind of a daily discipline, we carry this message to other alcoholics and addicts. This is 12-step life. So the original description of step 12 has a whole chapter dedicated to scenarios as if treatment centers never existed, or detoxes, or this easy access to really good care and nutrition, or reintroduction to nature as we settle in from an addiction. These things weren't considerations back then. So you see a lot of that being offered in NA. It's a workbook and being a guide. I think there's certain rules that have evolved over the last 80 years. I think the first premise is that of just a human service professional: do no harm. This is peer-to-peer help if it's in a recovery community of the 12 steps. I am not an expert at everything, but what I can do is show you how to work the 12 steps. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I haven't drank. And this is how I was taught how to do it. And it became more than not drinking. That's kind of the approach. It's not based on power at all. So what do I do? I mean, for me, I'm involved in refuge recovery. And, since it's alumni, other 12-step programs where there's little things you could do. It starts as an act of kindness and service, but we don't want to always befuddle it with the 12-step. I could give people rides. I could do that if I'm on step 2. I answer the phone when someone in needs and calling me. I know where to bring people, where my county office is to get people Medicaid and healthcare. I have the number in my phone. I think that's distinct help. It's hard to tell someone who has chronic tooth pain to give me a call every day and keep their hope up. I want to help more than that. That's just me. I found out where this 12-step lies for me. That's initial help. Getting involved in a home group is service. But what the meaningful part of step 12 is, it looks like for me, is that I can handle 2 people a week, showing them at any level how to get through the steps. And that comes in the form of going through the literature with them once a week and progressing that way, and giving them an understanding of what that fellowship, whatever it may be, NA, AA, or refuge recovery, what it is and what it isn't, and how I could get them through the steps, guide them through it, and let them have their own experience. That for me, and the description of it, is the fail-safe for every one of these programs. If all else fails and you are still saddled and burdened with an obsession to drink and use drugs, the only hope is that you throw yourself into this step, and that they're promising there'll be a breakthrough. And that's in rare cases. By this time, you'll be feeling quite sane, and they're defining sane as seeing your drug of choice as giving up on life. It's not appealing. It's not that you're strictly you're in a position now, we talked of last 2 weeks, of neutrality. But I do owe a debt. This isn't a free lunch. And I could speak firsthand to that. I was 14 years sober, and I thought I was in a state that would never stop being, of sobriety. And since I did not maintain my spiritual well-being, purpose of life, enlarged empathy, and taking people through the steps, addiction showed back up for me, because addiction isn't use. It's a way of thinking that draws me to being the victim of some narrative in my head where I've been cheated. My inadequacies just take over my self-esteem. This internal dialogue starts to interrupt my relationships around me. I don't know what's real and false. And eventually I want relief from that. And in a panic, you might not go back to the steps. I want to keep these as a discipline. So with permission from my wife, not taking obligations away from my family, I get to use Sundays to work 12, formally work step 12. That's how I unpacked it. And I meet people to read the book. And then I walk them through the steps. If they are not comfortable, I do not sell them on any idea. I encourage whatever that they want to follow up with. I encourage people, by the time they're on the 5th step, they don't have to do it with me. If they're victims of trauma, I really highly suggest they see a licensed therapist. If they have legal matters, I show them. I just find comfort in this, that I know what resources to point them to of legal services. I also want to step on, if this is something that calls to you by step 12 and you want a standard of ethics beyond the spiritual guidelines that are being set down in programs like NA and AA, most states have what are CRS programs or advocacy programs, where it's a certificate training. In Pennsylvania, it's a CRS, a certified recovery specialist. And this could be 8 to 12 classes. That gives you standards and ethics when helping people, almost that of a paraprofessional approaching social work, that I'm listening to people with non-judgment. So the 12 step isn't this, like, you didn't join the Elks Club. A lot of this is going to require patience on my part working it. I'm going to have to listen to sick people who are having that conflict in their head. They want to get well, but this toxic, crazy talk is still coming out of them. I'm going to meet them where they're at. I'm going to listen until I feel they're ready. They inch forward through the first 3 steps. That requires patience. And that's what I see. The guidance in 12-step organizations is love and tolerance is my code. Love doesn't make you always feel, it doesn't make you feel good. It might require you to tolerate some really, horrible things you might hear, or just bad manners and yada, yada. I'm going to wait, because in there is someone who wants to be well. And it's a fine line of when someone could take advantage of you. I think if you, at this point, are having a spiritual awakening and you have your guide and your friends around you, and you could talk to them about taking someone through step 12, it'll be well. It's not about me at this point. I'm just being a vehicle of something I just became a part of. And that's a refreshing guide in that field. But that's the spiritual debt I think I felt I owed at step 12 this time, that I take meaningfully. I don't want to become cynical about this. I should not be on this podcast tonight. The last 2 years of me trying to stop drinking involved me being in a coma, a lot of grief. I lost my sister at the time and had no tools to really deal with that. And I was still in an active addiction. And, I shouldn't be here, like, in that sense. And to feel that debt was paid because someone spent time with me in their garage. Like, that was the last exit to show me how to get through the steps again. And I took the trust of just following the instructions as best I could. I don't take that lightly at all. I feel I could have been cashed out very easily. I could taste it. And I do tap into that in steps 11 and 12, that I got a second chance at life. And I owe that debt to someone else who is suffering the same exact condition I have. I am not unique in that. And the solution is in that space between steps 1 and 11, where we become aware. And we do feel a sense of power wake up in us, that our history and the story we might have already been born into that started without us. We could call it trauma or detachment. I could look at it with a new curiosity that makes me objective, pull back to a wide shot, my lens to see that this isn't just about me. I want to be a part of life, and being a part of life is being a part of other people's point of view, caring about their needs. And maybe always I could deny and shorten my list of needs. So I could really take an active part in the people's lives that I want to love and care about more meaningfully. That's what the steps are giving back to me. And to keep it, I have to show someone else how to do it, because going to meetings could be extremely, extremely confusing. It could be misinterpreted as just straight group therapy. And you're bringing a problem up every week. And eventually it's just not enough to talk about it. You're going to have to take the action steps, and you need someone to show you how to do them. And that's what I'll always have to be available for. I'm going to skip around with some questions, but step 12 is best worked after the first 11 steps, practical advice. But I'm Ashley. Hi, Ashley. Good to see you. I hope you had a nice holiday. Please sign in so we know you were in. Ashley, sign in. So, guys, I wanted to make another quick announcement. If you haven't been checking in, check out Hammock Readings. It's on our YouTube page every morning, and Facebook. We update it every morning. And it's a way to take a daily reading and add a little animation and a flow to it on social media and YouTube. We pick readings from anywhere. You could read poetry from Rumi, Just for Today by N.A., the Daily Reflections, just as a way for alumni to start the day with an intention, see a video, to start the day that way. You can sign up for an email list and get them. We'll be updating. We're on season 2 now. We're trying to keep them with fall, summer, winter. Will be coming up, a little Christmas, holiday, wintry scenes. But it's been a fun way to stay in touch with each other and share the common goal of wanting to enlarge our practice of the 12 steps. There's Scott. Thanks, Scott. I did. It's a great holiday. Really chill. I spent it on a farm. Hey, Chris. So, has anyone had any experience with working step 12 and practicing these principles in all our affairs? That's another half of the step I didn't really touch on, and I should. The principles and the steps, you could Google it. It's really interesting. There's a spiritual principle behind every step: willingness, honesty, hope, forgiveness. And I can't quote them offhand, but these are the principles that show up into our spiritual life from working the steps. And for me, I was telling you a little example how, just working the steps, it wasn't forced, gave me a forgiveness for my father, who I resented, and how I found that, he was stuck in the same condition as I was. And I stopped seeing that distinction and kind of lifted outside of my own point of view through imagination and the practice of meditation. I could see the end zone of where I could begin forgiveness. And the other principles is the honesty that, in one half of my period of sobriety of 14 years, I wasn't able to practice these principles of keeping honest in certain parts of my life. I started to open up little pockets where my integrity was starting to crack. And being that I have the condition of alcoholism, substance use disorder, I was really gambling. I'm gambling with fire. I cannot feel like two different people in my head. Like, this is Joe here. And some degree, we all have this, as humans, but there's a high price for me to pay if I'm not practicing being authentic Joe as much as possible, being present, being aware. It woke that beast back up in me that shows up as an ego, and this will keep me protected. Stay a little more in the fantasy life this afternoon or here, and I don't want that to happen again. That's why I stick around people in recovery often, weekly, daily, that are keeping these principles and trying to live towards them. Reduces anxiety. I've experienced most of my life. It reduces depression. Sorry, I thought I saw Jonathan. So these are the principles and the courage to practice them in some tight situations because of having low self-esteem, maybe pushing me towards telling a lie or stretching something a little more. When I'm around people that are practicing 12 steps, um, I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. I have a little more courage and guts that I'm falling short somewhere. I don't feel judged. Humor in AA or NA is used often to not feel judged, and we could start talking about it. Why do I do these things? I don't want to do them. I don't want to harm anyone, and I don't want to feel artificial. Hi, Lisa. Maybe you could do a workshop on where to meet a companion and what to watch out for as far as things to interfere with your sobriety when trying to be in a dating game. Not for me, but I have a girlfriend that is really lonely and wants to date without relapsing. Lisa, I think that's a great suggestion. And I think that would be a great workshop. Dating in sobriety, dating in recovery, when you are dating, how far have you progressed in the steps, um, dealing with unresolved emotional relationships from the past before moving forward. That'd be a really interesting discussion, and especially with technology today. From where do you meet people outside of 12 steps, church? You got Tinder and Bumble for millennials. How do you behave on these things without becoming depraved or feeling, like like so plastic of just be swiping on things? I think that would be interesting. It could get some interesting guests. Is there a healthy approach to this that makes us feel like we're still in recovery? I'm going to jot that down, Lisa. Thanks for the suggestion. Hi, Megan. Hi, Jonathan. Does everyone have a sponsor on here that's taking you through the steps? Um, that's another question. And then the idea of spiritual awakening, that those words always freak me out. I've been around 12-step programs most of my life. My father's involvement, mine. I had some trouble with that word, but it's a great way to look at what addiction is consciously. Like, what is a conscious person? I could have these genetic predispositions to addiction. Uh, Anything in my nurturing could have brought it out. It doesn't even have to be abuse. Some stress my mother may have had during pregnancy can have cortisol effects on how my dopamine would develop in my brain, and this mutes my ability to deal with reality or self-soothe. I retreat. I've always heard a guy, John, always quotes a guy that said, my first addiction was my fantasy life, and I could relate to that very much. And before I found alcohol and started smoking some grass, that was how I could deal with, I think, a lot of things, or being present, say in school, in grade school early, just seemed like excruciating to be conscious and aware of the present moment. Needed some retreat. So I do understand when I started to unpack this as an adult, I am asleep. I'm very much asleep. I'm asleep to a shared reality, a truth, a purpose that doesn't change with my emotional state, a purpose to life that doesn't change with my anxieties. or a new flavor or some superficial goal that I could readjust my integrity to accomplish. I take to heart what my spiritual awakening is now. My personality is transforming. I'm still my wise ass self at times, but my goals have changed dramatically, or the purpose and fulfillment I want out of life. I don't feel myself easily attracted to superficial goals or ideas that used to help me at least extinguish fears. And this is part of step 12 and what would lie in practicing these principles in all our affairs. Um, I think the exciting part of life is to not know where it's going because I'm leading it with principles instead of these destinations or like financial goals, or if I could get this done, it's going to break down. My life will be meaningful since I work the steps of how I'm treating other people. The goals become almost second place. How do I relate and treat other people? Because now I'm awake, and that means I can recognize if other people are sick quicker and be patient, show them kindness, give them an ear, not take things personal from someone who may even be attacking me. That's what a spiritual awakening could do for a person. Um, Scott, your sponsor was a flake. Get a new one. Frost that flake. Yeah, it's tough when you ask someone to be your sponsor. It puts a title, some you know, undefined role over the person. I always suggest to people, ask someone if they work the steps. Oh, you have? Can you show me how to work them? And I think it takes the air out of the tires of what the relationship's going to be, and it lets it be balanced. I just made 2 years on November 9th. I love my fellowship. I had a love-hate relationship with Avenues. LOL. I could hear the laughing. Today, I am welcome back to speak. I'm grateful that's great. That's great, Letitia. Thank you for sharing that. I could understand love-hate relationships with treatment centers. And then we could rise above. I always use my imagination. I never limit myself to my present circumstances. Historically, I like to be a part of that imagination. 80 years ago, we had no treatment centers. So even if, any scenario is better than what we faced historically. And Avenues, I have a love relationship with them. Um, Being a part of this organization has changed my life in more ways than one. Um, no, I don't have a sponsor in my area. It's hard to find meetings. Mostly due to Ida damage, but also because there's just not a lot of meeting places here. Lisa, I hope I could see you have access to internet. I hope Zoom's cutting it for now as things maybe attempt to return to normal where you're at. And we're always available for support. I think I mentioned last time, reach out. I think Ashley is your alumni coordinator, and see if we could get you hooked up with someone that you can meet once a week, some kind of contact in your fellowship that'll be responsive and responsible. Maybe we could help with that. Oh, hey, Russ. Yeah, Ashley Duncan. Russ is always on it. Quick layups for Russ. Yeah, guys, if you are struggling, even making contact, from Russ's advice, reach out to your alumni coordinator. Don't feel defeated. And just because you have one weird experience of someone being a flake, your life is in your hands. Don't put it into strangers. Keep trying. It's filled with more people than whatever experience you're having, and we can help do that. Oh, great. That's great. Well, guys, I don't want to browbeat the 12 step into the point where you're like, you know, I'll skip this step. Joe has made it sound so boring and intellectually gooey. Uh, but that's not the case. Step 12, if you're not on step 12, that doesn't mean you can't help other people. Step 12 is specifically to teach other people how to work the steps once you're completed. But if you're on step 3 or you're writing a fourth step, talk to people of how you work the first 2 steps, how your hate relationship with avenues went to love because of the fellowship and connecting with people that suffer from the same problem that could kill any one of us. You could, if you have a car and a license, you're a vital need to recovery communities. You could give people a ride. If you have a phone, you can answer it and give your number out at every meeting and ask for numbers. So I encourage you to get involved, and that could start by joining a home group, going down to a soup kitchen to people who are struggling. Recovery banks and community centers are constantly looking for help. You can get involved before you're on step 12 and make connections with people. Hi, Ashley. I'm struggling with spirituality and my higher power. I do pray, but I'm having trouble feeling the hope and connection with my spirituality, and I'm not sure how to go about getting that back. Well, I can't speak to your definition of spirituality, but I can speak to the shared definition in 12-step groups. Spirituality could come in the form of, for some, faith, and faith usually has a narrative attached to it. Their religion. Spirituality, for a whole chapter, say in the big book for agnostics, is this approach to the conscious life that I am not everything that could be experienced, my mind. Can I connect to the world in a deeper meaning? And if I'm not ready to say the word God, or that's not of my liking, or a higher power, can I trust a community where the 12 steps are working? Can I keep moving forward? So it's not about feeling. I noticed that in myself and other alcoholics in recovery. They're looking to feel something. Spirituality, in the terms of 12 steps, it's not about feeling. It's about, can I practice these actions long enough before I realize I'm awake? So it might not feel good all the time, Ashley, but it's not about us feeling good. It's about us practicing the steps. And then before you know it, you wake up and you're there. You're Ashley. You're an Ashley that's, you're not afraid to go to bed. Your self-esteem's back. So that's the hope. I wouldn't treat it as something that is like a dopamine clicker. It shows us a roadmap to build a discipline to our life that involves meditation, helping other people, and being able to always admit when we're wrong and not start new fires. So, guys, season 2 will start up in mid-January. Oh, yeah, we'll call it season 2. So that'll be our next workshop. We'll start an 8-week course. We'll have a guest every week, a surprise guest. And I'm going to take a little more of a back seat, be a host. This was a heavy lift some nights by myself. I love having guests. So this was our first run, and we got a good response, and we still want all of your comments, criticisms, what you liked, what you want more of. Please message your alumni coordinators or our Facebook, and we'll try to accommodate that. So we're making the mark, we're connecting, we're talking about the principles that Avenues holds, and that's 12 step for continual recovery using the 12 steps. We'll also have season 3 coming out of our hammock readings. So I want to thank you all. This has been a real pleasure to do this. And it's a new way to talk to each other, especially in some uncertain times. And all of you have great questions. And I'm glad to see so many people just diving into the steps after they leave Avenues and staying in touch and coming back to help other alumni. This is how it works. Hey, thanks, Pat. That was really nice. Pat's from Scranton. Louisiana's in the house, everyone. It's hard saying goodbye. I don't know how to end it. I wish I had like confetti. Maybe I could add it in post. some kind of explosion. We'll have to get After Effects attached to this stream, and then I could blow things up. Thanks, guys. When a show's over, I feel a show's over. So thanks again. Thanks for the support. Thank you, Avenues. I'll see you guys soon. Email me. Let me put my email up there before I end. Email me any questions you have on the steps, or any way I can be helpful, or a guide or a resource to wherever you're at, to finding people in recovery communities, or step questions. I will get back to you within the week. That's my email. So I'll leave it up there. It'll be up there if you pause at the end of it. Peace, guys. Be safe and sober this holiday.